Very few companies had the presence on the Super Nintendo that Square did. Before its merger with fellow JRPG revolutionary Enix, Square was pushing out massive hits like Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger, and many more on the humble 16-bit console. Just before the Super Nintendo died in 1996, 4 months before the N64 would release, Nintendo would trust their mascot to Square for an unheard of crossover, something that Nintendo was extremely fickle about at the time and still is pretty hesitant about today. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars is Mario's first foray into the RPG genre, and one that would spawn a legendary suite of successors. While largely traditional, the game would have a few unique twists that cemented it as one of the Super Nintendo's most classic RPGs. The game starts off the same as every Mario game. Bowser has captured Princess Peach, still called Toadstool in this game, and Mario needs to save her. This task has become so routine that every character in the game is rolling their eyes and treating it as an everyday occurrence. It's funny how much this little gag parallels modern Mario, especially the new Super Mario Bros. Series, and the plot fatigue surrounding it. After Mario saves the princess, a gigantic sword falls through the roof of Bowser's Keep, launching Mario, Peach, and Bowser away. This sword is Exor, the living, breathing home of Smithy and his gang, who have arrived to take over the kingdom. Incapable of reaching the keep by himself, Mario begins his journey across the Mushroom Kingdom, looking for a way to turn away the invaders. This is just a quick intro to the story. There's a lot more to come, but it's really fun to have a story with some slight meta elements. And despite being simple, it has a lot of nice moments. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars plays mostly like a standard RPG, but tends towards the simple side with a few twists. The game is played in a semi-3D isometric perspective. In the overworld, Mario moves around, does light platforming, and explores. Exploration is usually rewarded with surprise boxes, some of which are invisible. These boxes can contain items, weapons, and equipment, healing items, attacking items, or extra flower points. The flower points are the greatest reward and really push the player to explore, as the party shares a pool that are used for special attacks, and unlike most games, the cap never raises by leveling, instead only by finding more flowers in the overworld. Weapons and equipment follow a fairly linear path, where the most recently found will almost always be just slightly better than the previous, and very few have additional effects. On the other hand, accessories tend to have effects, some basic like status resistance, and others a little more complicated, stat boost, death resist, and even one that helps find invisible chests. Enemies appear in the overworld, and at least one of that type of enemy will appear in the battle, giving the player a rough idea of what to expect. The battle system is fairly typical, but it has the action command system, here called timed hits, which would be popularized by Paper Mario. After performing an attack, the player can press A, and depending on the timing, increase the attack's damage by 1.5 to 2 times. Special moves also have timed hits, but can have slight differences in how they're performed, holding a button, mashing, and so on. Mario and his party members can also block enemy attacks, although it's pretty tough in this game. While normal attacks are usually pretty fair, blocking magic kind of feels like a crapshoot, as the animations are incredibly vague on where and when to time it. A flaw mostly ironed out with Paper Mario's far more expressive animations. Speaking on special attacks really quick, while most of Mario's party members' attacks are fine, some of the enemy specials have animations that are a little bit too long. Nothing as bad as some of the 3D Final Fantasy summons, but it's worth noting that enemies and groups that all use long magic can really kill the pace of the game. Regardless, the timed hit system is a fantastic way to keep the player constantly engaged, where other games can turn the average battle into a normal attack mash fest. The game's UI is incredibly slick in battle too. Instead of a long menu full of submenus, each button, A, B, X, and Y, is used for one action: A for attack, X for items, Y for special attacks, and B for defend and run. It's a little odd at first, but it eventually becomes really slick and comfortable. Stats are pretty straightforward: attack, defense, magic attack, and magic defense do exactly what one would expect, and speed determines turn order. The game's level cap is 30, and each level comes with a massive boost to every stat, plus the choice of a bonus to either attack and defense, magic attack and magic defense, or HP, with one of the three being the preferred boost that gives extra on every level. There's also a small pool of status effects that Mario and his party can receive or inflict: Fear, which reduces the damage given and increases the damage taken; Mushroom, which prevents all action but causes a slow passive heal; Poison, which slowly inflicts damage; Scarecrow, which prevents attacking; Silence, which prevents using special attacks; and Sleep, which prevents all actions but ends when hit by a physical attack. Unlike many games, Mario RPG removes all the party members' status conditions at the end of a battle, including giving them 1 HP if they're knocked out. On top of that, while only 3 members can be out in battle at a time, bench members will still gain experience. Speaking of the party, Mario RPG has 5 characters, each of which has its own niche. Mario is somewhat balanced, but tends towards really strong hyper offense. As the game goes on, his physical strength gets really absurd, and his special attacks keep up pretty well. Mario has 2 types of special attacks: jumps, where the second stage is a multi-bounce that goes as long as the player can keep timing the hits correctly, and the third version of the jump, which will bounce randomly between enemies on the screen. His fire attacks deal decent damage and eventually grow to hit multiple enemies. It's a good thing Mario is good too, as Mario is the only character who's always in the party, while the other 2 slots are up to choice. I'll wait on discussing the rest until we get to them a bit later. So that covers all the basics. While it is simple, it's a good kind of simple. It's a good beginner RPG and it's constantly engaging due to the timed hit system. Speaking on beginner, the game is pretty easy. It's not a cakewalk, but clearing most screens is enough to keep Mario and party ahead of the level curve, especially given everyone levels up even if not in battle. Timed hits, when mastered, make the game even easier, but it's not entirely without challenge. Some bosses, especially the optional super boss, can actually require a bit of strategy. The game has no debuffs as far as I'm aware, and only simple buffs. The skill comes more in good timing and commands than it does with complex strategies and planning. Hell, game overing lets Mario keep his experience while giving him his items back, which means failure isn't always a negative. The hardest part of the game, outside of the optional boss, is probably the platforming. While the game never demands much on this end, when it does, the game is isometric. It's going to be painful to try to be precise. That said, the game controls well. Up is true up, up left is true up left, and as I said before, the battle UI and menus are fantastic. The game also looks really good for what it is. While early 3D always runs the risk of looking bad in hindsight, the chunky, chibi style of the characters actually gives the game a solid style of its own. The downright bizarre character designs also enhance this style. Most still feel like they could fit into any Mario game, but have such alien designs and goofy concepts that it comes together really well. The game has a wide variety of locations, and while they aren't all winners, most of them are really fun and colorful. There's also a surprising amount of detail for something so technically difficult. I'm still no good at music, but it's all really good. The forest song is iconic, even people who've never played the game probably heard it in a video or something before. The music also often incorporates older Mario music in subtle ways, whether it's the underworld or overworld theme. For a Super Nintendo game, it almost feels nostalgic for its source material, which is really cool. The one element of the aesthetic that isn't great is the translation. Some stuff is improperly localized, like Yoshi's Island being called Yoster's Island and Cheep Cheeps losing their name, but the biggest pain is that most equipment lacks proper descriptions. The Quartz Charm, perhaps the best accessory in the game, has the description Shining Source of Power. What the hell does it actually do? It boosts damage by 50%, reduces damage by 50%, and has resistance and death, which prevents its holder from dying when at full health. It's one of the biggest rough spots in an otherwise really nice looking and sounding game. Spoilers here, the game is pretty predictable, it's still Mario, but being an RPG it is decently story heavy, so caution I suppose. Outside of Mario's pad, yes that's actually what it's called, Peach is taken by Bowser who drags her to his keep. Toad offers Mario some tutorials, and in an amazing bit of foresight, these and every other tutorial in the game are entirely skippable. Toad also treats the situation fairly lightly, and even Mario, despite his silence, seems to find the whole thing routine. Bowser's keep is a straight line with a few terrapin, armored Koopas to practice battling on. At the end of the keep is the first boss, or bosses of the game. Mario and Bowser fight on chandeliers high above the floor with kinklinks, a variation of chain chomps holding the chandeliers up. Bowser himself is invincible in this fight, having infinite health, so Mario will instead need to attack his kinklink until it drops Bowser to the ground. As soon as Mario saves Peach, who again is referred to exclusively as Toadstool in this game, Exor falls from the sky through the heart of Bowser's keep, launching everyone away from each other. Mario ends up back at his house, and Toad asks him once again to find Peach. As he returns to Bowser's keep, the giant sword, Exor, smashes the bridge to the entrance, proclaiming the keep as the Smithy gang's property as Mario flees and the prologue ends. From here, the real adventure begins. Mario's first step is getting through Mushroom Way to the Mushroom Kingdom. Enemies in this area are simple. Even at level 1, the Goombas populating the area go down in one attack, and the Sky Troopas and Spikies aren't much worse. Toad will lead the way throughout, and by saving him from enemies, Mario gets small additional rewards. The first real bosses are fought here too, a pair of Hammer Bros. Hammer Bros can attack normally or throw hammers in quick succession, which can be pretty devastating in this fight. After beating them, Mario gets his first hammer. Unlike Paper Mario, it has no use in the overworld, however it's stronger than Mario's fist, and even changes the timing of his normal attacks slightly, as all three of his weapon variants do, gloves, hammer, and shell. The Mushroom Kingdom is a standard JRPG town. There's a shop and an inn, which do exactly what one would expect, buying and healing, plus a few small houses with NPCs to meet. The highlight of the area is the castle, where Mario meets the Chancellor. Afterwards, Mario meets Mallow, a young tadpole who has been robbed by a dinosaur bandit. When Mallow cries, it begins to rain, a hint at his future abilities. Mallow is the first party member. He's fairly weak physically and is intended to be the group mage. All of his special attacks are weather-centric, mostly offensive. His magic also tends to hit all enemies, even his first spell, Thunderbolt. He also has a moderate healing spell, which is honestly insanely useful at the start. Items don't stack in the player's inventory, and as HP Rain only costs 2 FP, it's more efficient to carry Syrup, which recovers 10 FP for 5 heals than to carry Mushrooms, especially as HP Rain can be used outside of battle at any time. Mallow also has a unique spell called Psychopath. When used, it shows the opponent's remaining HP and if perfectly timed, reads the opponent's mind with a small line of dialogue. It's effectively a precursor to Paper Mario's Tattle, but unfortunately the HP meter doesn't stick around, meaning it's hard to justify wasting turns on it. Mario and Mallow chase the thief, Croco, into Bandit's way. The area has a little platforming, and once the party reaches the end, they'll need to sneak up on Croco to get him to fight. Croco's boss fight is fairly standard, but he does have a weakness to fire and a unique interaction with it. When hit with Mario's fireballs, his tail may set on fire, causing him to skip a turn. The item Croco stole was a frog coin, rare currency that is mostly won from minigames or found in invisible chests, and can be traded at frog shops for rare items and equipment. When Mario and Mallow return to the Mushroom Kingdom, they find it overrun with shysters, shy guys that pogo around on knives, seemingly coming from inside the castle. In the throne room is Mac, the first member of the Smithy gang, a living knife with a jack-o'-lantern guy on top. Every few turns, Mac will spawn bodyguards, effectively just renamed shysters, and hops off screen to avoid damage, so Mario and Mallow will need to eliminate them as quickly as possible. Best done with Mallow's Thunderbolt, which hits all enemies. Once Mac is dead, Mario finds a star piece, but what exactly that is comes to light a little later. If this first chapter is a tutorial, it's a damn good one that sets up the story and stakes and teaches the basics of the game pretty silently. With his shopping finally completed, Mallow needs to return home to Tadpole Pond. To get there, he and Mario take a shortcut through Karo Sewers. The sewers are a maze-like mini-dungeon where Mario will need to drain the water to progress. There's a semi-optional mini-boss hiding in a chest, a mimic named Pandorite. These mimics, usually with different stats, names, and enemies they can spawn, appear infrequently in the game and are actually fairly threatening for their respective areas. At the end of the sewers is Balom, a weird bipedal, four-eyed, swirly dog that throws out sleep and scarecrow status effects. Balom is the first real threat in the game, and he's also adorable. The sewers flood and force Mario down the river to the game's first minigame, which are all a mixed bag of small events to break up the gameplay. The Midas River minigame begins with Mario being carried down a waterfall, allowing him to swim upwards a little bit to grab some coins and frog coins. Then it transitions to the second phase where Mario is standing on a barrel and has to jump between them to get coins. Like most of the minigames, it's a fine distraction, but nothing special. The coins can be traded for much more valuable frog coins at the end too. At Tadpole Pond, Frogfucius, Mallow's father, reveals that Mallow isn't actually a tadpole, perhaps the game's funniest moment, and asks Mario to help Mallow find his real family. Their next destination is Rosetown, and to get there they pass through Rose Way where they see Bowser reassembling his minions, although the party don't interact with him quite yet. Rosetown isn't doing too hot when they get there. Poison arrows rain around town and the toads that live there are all paralyzed due to the assault. In the inn, Mario meets a young fanboy who wants to play dolls with his hero. He has dolls of Mario, Bowser, Peach, and a unique doll named Geno. The Geno doll accidentally launches a bullet at Mario, knocking him out and forcing him to rest at the inn. As the party sleeps, a star comes from the sky and possesses the Geno doll and wanders into the forest. The forest maze area is actually a maze with some lost wood-like elements, searching various tree trunks for caves, and then following Geno while dodging enemies to reach the end. There's also an absolutely bizarre enemy here, the Gorilla, which is a chained up Donkey Kong. Who did this to Donkey Kong? Why? At the end of the forest is Boyer, a living bow, and Geno joins the fight against him with Mario. Geno is a glass cannon, low defenses and HP, but solid stats in both attacks. Geno's specials are mostly offensive, but he does have a buffing spell that raises his or an ally's attack, and if timed right, it also raises their defense. Geno whirls, perhaps his most infamous attack, while mediocre if not timed. When it is timed, it's the most powerful attack in the game, dealing 9,999 damage, but it doesn't work on bosses in certain larger fights. It's mostly good for clearing out some problem enemies. These three form a very solid team core, and they were what I used for most of the game until the very late game. With Mallow on heal and spread damage, Geno boosting and dealing decent DPS himself, and Mario's pure power. Boyer has a very unique gimmick, with 3 buttons laid out in front of him, X, Y, and A. During battle he can shoot these buttons, preventing the whole party from using the actions on these buttons one at a time. Being locked out of attacks is especially harsh, which makes the battle incredibly satisfying. After getting Boyer's star, Geno, real name heart music note exclamation point question mark, going by Geno for the ease of Mario and Mallow, explains that he's a star guardian. Spirits in charge of granting wishes, but wishes can't be granted unless the star pieces are returned to rebuild their home Star Road. One of Boyer's minions overhears this exchange and goes to inform Smithy, who with that knowledge will also want to collect the star pieces. At the start of the next chapter, Mario unlocks the Pipe Vault, an optional area that I'll cover after the main game. Instead, Mario's intended to go to Moleville, a small mining colony of mole people. A cave-in has trapped 2 moles, Dinah and Mite, and the moles ask Mario to help find them. The mines have some pretty harsh enemies, as at this point, common enemies will begin to throw around status effects and use special moves. Croco appears once again, stealing all of Mario's coins and is rematched with a few new tricks, like stealing Mario's items and better stats. Once Croco's knocked out, Mario takes all his stuff back and blows a hole in the wall to go deeper. At the end of the cave is Punchinello, an adorable living butt plug who summons increasingly large bombs that Mario's party needs to take out before they explode and cause serious damage. The final largest bomb goes off, eliminating Punchinello and freeing the moles, as well as giving Mario the third star piece. To leave the mine, Mario and the moles play a minecart minigame based around breaking on corners and boosting to keep up speed. A small cutaway shows the fate of Peach. She's fallen to the top of a very large tower controlled by Booster, a charmingly goofy semi-villain spoiled from birth who's an awkward man-child who plans to force Peach into marriage. Mario and Mallow reach Booster's tower after going through Booster Pass, but the front door is locked. They encounter Bowser here and he decides to make Mario and Mallow's minions and helps them kick the door down. Bowser is a physical tank offensively and defensively and has special moves that cause fear and poison, but is probably the least usable character in the game, as the physical powerhouse niche is already pretty well filled by Mario, who's of course non-optional in the party. If Mario could be swapped out, Bowser may have a role, but alas. That said, Bowser's personality here is great. While Mallow has an arc, the others are pretty bland, save Bowser. Bowser is insecure and driven by his ego, but also shows a surprising amount of care for his minions. Later in the game, when he meets his former minions who have abandoned him for new pacifist lives, he instantly forgives and even somewhat congratulates them for it. He never changes, but it's in a very endearing way. The tower is highly vertical, and falling can send Mario back some. There's a small Easter egg where Mario can go behind a curtain to turn into the NES version of Mario from Super Mario Bros. 1, and listen to a remix of that game's overworld theme. It's cute. At the top, Mario can hide behind the curtains to avoid an optional boss fight against the man himself, Booster, and his pack of Sniffits. Whether he's fought or not, Mario will need to fight Knife Guy and Great Guy, two clowns who are fought at the same time. While they aren't particularly strong, going against two bosses with different abilities at the same time is a new twist. Mallow can do some solid damage to both, but targeting one at a time is the way to go. For this and most other future dual bosses, as taking 2 hits a turn can really add up. Booster is run off to Marymore, a small town with a wedding chapel, and Mario and party need to chase him up a hill in a short minigame, where every time he's caught up to, the party gains an extra FP. But the outcome is always the same, with him getting away, with the party needing to bust into the chapel and break up the wedding. As the wedding is being broken up, the chefs and their wedding cake arrive, starting a battle. There are 2 torts, which are invincible but weak Koopas, and Bunt, their cake. After damaging the cake enough times, it comes to life, scaring off the torts. Bunt transforms into Raspberry, but isn't too tough, and when his health is out, Booster comes and eats him in one bite, and finally satisfied, he basically leaves the game. Mario returns Peach to the castle, but she sneaks out to join him, becoming the last member of the party and probably the best. Peach has a group healing that also removes statuses for only 4 flower points, which is only twice what Mallow's far worse healing costs. She can revive fallen allies to full health for only 2 flower points, and has a powerful attack that hits all enemies at once. Her stats don't matter at all because she's a recovery machine. I'd even consider her strictly necessary for fighting the optional super boss. Unsure of where to go, the party visits Frogfucius, who tells them a star piece has fallen onto Star Hill, and yep, it's there, unguarded and out in the open. Star Hill itself has a cool design and cool music. There are doors open by finding all the flowers in a room, and Mario can read the wishes of fallen stars, including some from characters the players would know, including Mallow's wish to find his parents, and even one probably from Luigi, wanting to be as strong as his brother. Luigi doesn't have much presence in the game if it wasn't obvious, although he was intended to be a character at some point. Mario grabs the star piece and moves on to Seaside Town, an odd village where the residents all act very strangely towards Mario, and there's a new frog shop with some powerful accessories, one that doubles all experience points, and one that halves all flower point costs. Village Elder points Mario to a sunken ship. A brief swim through the sea brings Mario to the sunken ship, a small dungeon full of ghosts. There's a unique puzzle here. Mario needs a password to progress made of 6 letters and can get hints by going through small puzzle room, knocking a cannonball off a pillar by directing a Koopa around, lining up springs to bounce a cannonball, a pretty iffy blind maze, collecting a series of coins through platforming, timing launching cannonballs into switches, and pushing barrels around. Once the password is entered, Mario fights King Calamari, a huge squid and its tentacles which serve as little enemies to harass Mario. After, Mario fights a shark man, Jonathan Johnny Jones, whose first phase is a standard fight against him and his minions, but halfway through he'll decide to fight Mario solo for the star piece. No Mallow, no healing besides items, just taking turns back and forth. Without the safety of a full party, it gets pretty intense. Mario returns to Seaside with the new star piece, and the village elder reveals himself to be another Smithy gang member, Yoritavich, who has imprisoned the whole town and impersonated them to force Mario to retrieve the star piece for him. Mario hands the star over to save the village, and Yoritavich attempts to flee into the ocean, but is stopped in the most anime way, with the former villain Johnny becoming an ally and forcing Yari to fight Mario. Yoritavich has really powerful magic, but his main gimmick is making mirages. Just like in the village where he made those mirages of the townfolk, here you can make a second Yoritavich to increase his damage output and throw the party off from attacking him. The easiest way to spot the fake is by his lower defenses, whichever takes more damage is the fake. With Eurytovich down, Mario recollects the 5th star. The party then arrives at Land's End, quite literally the edge of the Mushroom Kingdom. Incapable of moving past a giant cliff, the group drop below the desert into Balom Temple. Here they once again find Balom, and with a new trick up his sleeve. Balom can swallow any of Mario's allies and make a clone of them to fight alongside him, each using similar stats to the character they've cloned and spells similar to the character's element, like Mallow using electric magic. Behind Balom's temple is Monster Town, a town of reformed monsters like Goombas and Womps. It also has some optional bosses, but we're gonna wait on that for a bit. Monster Mama calls upon some Paracoopas to form platforms to carry Mario up the cliff to Bean Valley, a small area of interconnected pipes and piranha plants. At the end of the area is Mega Smilax, a giant piranha plant that spawns regular Smilaxes to assist it while tossing out harsh statuses like Sleep and Mushroom. When Mega Smilax dies, a giant beanstalk sprouts out and the party climbs to Nimbus Land. As they arrive, Valentina is giving a speech. She claims that the king is ill, but his long-lost son, Prince Mallow, has returned, and wheels out an obese bird claiming it's the prince. Mallow doesn't catch on that he's the prince, but a local resident recognizes him and helps him and Mario sneak in. Right away in the palace, the group fights the fake Prince Dodo. Dodo isn't a huge threat, but can cast Hush to stop anyone from using special attacks. Deep into the castle is a giant egg named Shelly. The egg won't attack, but once it's taken enough damage, it cracks open to reveal Birdo inside. It's cool to see her, and she's pretty strong in stats, but doesn't have any gimmicks or special attacks really. After chasing down Valentina, the group fight her and Dodo. Valentina will relentlessly spam magic, and after a few turns, Dodo will snatch Mallow, and the pair will need to fight one-on-one to return to the main battle, which can be kinda hard for solo Mallow despite him having healing. When defeated, Valentina falls through the clouds onto Booster Tower. Mallow finally reunites with his parents, who tell him that they saw a star piece fall into the nearby Barrel Volcano. Mario jumps from the sky into the volcano and travels through the dungeon to find the Czar Dragon. Czar Dragon is fairly bulky and tosses around magic, but after defeating him, he'll resurrect into Zombone, who trades defenses for a huge boost in power. Before Mario can get the star, the Axum Rangers jump in. The Axum Rangers are a Super Sentai and Power Rangers parody group. Each of the 5 members has a different niche, and Mario needs to fight all 5 at once, which can be fairly overwhelming. Pink can cause sleep and heals the other, Black has, sunglasses, red can boost himself, yellow is an offensive and defensive tank, and green is the group mage. As the battle goes on, it gets easier and easier as the members drop out, but once they all fall, their ship itself begins to attack, firing the hugely damaging breaker beam every few turns, making speed essential. Once the ship goes down, Mario gets the 6th star piece. Finally, by having Mallow's parents fix up the royal bus, Mario and the party can fly to Bowser's Keep to finally end the Smithy gang. Croco somehow reached the castle too and offers to sell Mario items as the area's shopkeep. While Mario can turn around at any time, it becomes more and more inconvenient the deeper he goes. To get through the keep, Mario needs to go through 4 of 6 doors. 2 of them are platforming challenges, 2 are giant hallways full of fights, and 2 sets of puzzles like trivia and Chinese checkers. Afterwards, the group fights Magic Koopa, who has magic but also spawns in regular enemies pretty constantly. The group continue on to the room that Mario fought Bowser at the start of the game. The group once again fights on the chandeliers, this time against the robotic samurai Boomer, who has an instant KO move. After Boomer seppukus, the chandelier launches the party up to the top of the tower to fight Exor. Exor is actually the hilt of the sword, while the left eye, right eye, and mouth called Neosquid are another being. Exor can't be damaged while both his eyes are open, so the party needs to knock out at least one eye before attacking Exor, although the eyes will reopen over time. Regardless of the other components, when Exor is defeated, the rest also die, and suck Mario inside of them to the gate. The gate is a dimensional portal between the Mushroom Kingdom and Smithy's factory, it seems. The gate has 2 main gimmicks: platforming on bolts that rotate when Mario jumps, which is slow and miserable, and machine-made versions of past bosses, who are slightly modified versions of the Axum Rangers, Mac, Boyer, and Eurytovich. There's also a lot of bosses from here on. Countdown and the Dinglings are a giant clock. The clock cycles moves every hour, represented by turn, and will use a different move on every hour while the Dinglings run support. Deeper in are Cloaker and Domino, 2 circus ball people. Cloaker being the physical tank, while Domino is the magician. When one is defeated, the other will fuse with a snake, Cloaker with Earthlink, the physical snake, and Domino with Mad Adler, the magic snake. In the factory proper, the party needs to kill the whole staff. The first 3 fights are against knight-like monsters who get slightly stronger and have more minions each time. The first one, the clerk will boost himself, the manager will toss bombs, and the director will do both. The last line of defense is the factory chief, a stronger version of the ninja enemy, and Gunyoke, a tank that can fire off the breaker beam just like the Axum Rangers ship. Finally, the gang meets Smithy, who honestly isn't much of a character, he just wants to make weapons and nothing else. In his first phase, he'll attack like a fairly normal boss, but his ally, the Smelter, will occasionally let him create new enemies. Once he's defeated, Smithy smashes the foundation of the floor, dropping the party and himself into the strange Smithy Head hellscape, where he reveals his true form. Smithy's true head is gray and featureless. Every time his body takes 1000 damage, it'll temporarily stop attacking, but he can only be defeated by attacking his head, which can switch forms mid-battle with a shared health pool. The tank head has an instant kill and is weak to electric magic, definitely the most dangerous, while the other heads tend to deflect magic. The magic head spams magic attacks. As its name implies, the treasure head rolls roulette to spam statuses, and the mask is extremely bulky. The fight is actually decently tough, fitting of being the end of the game. With Smithy defeated, the final star piece is recovered, Star Road is repaired, allowing the world to receive wishes again, and Geno returns home. Outside of the castle, Mario and the party watch Exor vanish, then a brief epilogue rolls. Mallow is crowned prince, Bowser repairs his castle, Jonathan Jones stares into the sea, Croco races with the Yoshis, we'll get back to that in a second, Valentina and Booster get married, and then Luigi leads a parade as the credits roll, in his only physical appearance despite apparently intending to be a main character at one point early in the game's development. It's a decent story despite its simplicity, Mallow has a nice arc, and the game is fun, and never really requires grinding. It's fairly easy, but the writing and timed hit system elevate it from being otherwise pretty basic. Being an RPG, there's a fair amount of side content, although it's not a huge amount. There's some very small things like the surprise chest, and a few NPCs will give Mario items and frog coins for trades or meeting goals, like 30 consecutive super jumps, but there's a few larger things too. The largest side quest is through the Pipe Vault. The Pipe Vault is 1 tile wide and filled with pipes and piranha plants and Goombas as a reference to Super Mario Bros. 1's Underground. It even has the music and a little bit of platforming. Going immediately after it unlocks is pretty challenging, but Mario can return to it whenever. After platforming through it, Mario ends up at Yoster Island, a sloppy translation of Yoshi's Island. Mario can ride Yoshi to talk to other Yoshi, and most notably can compete in a new minigame, the Mushroom Derby. Boshi, a cool blue Yoshi with attitude and sunglasses, dominates the race and acts like the average competitive Smash Bros. Player, only wanting to do 1v1s while all the other Yoshis want to play 4-player party races. The minigame is played by alternating buttons to the rhythm of the background music. Some people find it insanely easy, non-musical people like myself find it miserable. Once he's defeated, Boshi gives in and learns to have fun. Decent concept, but the Pipe Vault is way better than the island itself, even if it's a cute reference to Yoshi's Island. There's a few other major minigames too. By playing with Knife Guy and finding his ball 12 times in a row, Mario gets the pass to Great Guy's Casino, where he can play slots and blackjack for frog coins. Mario can buy a weird little shoot-'em-up game called Beetle Mania from a kid in the Mushroom Kingdom Inn, redoing Booster Hill while catching beetles for money and frog coins, finding Toadovsky's song, the third of which is only given in musical form, and there's no way in hell I could have gotten that without a guide, and the 3 musty fears, who hide invisible flags around the map and reward Mario with a decent accessory if he finds all 3. There's also 5 optional boss fights. In Monster Town there's a dojo. Mario first challenges the student Jagger, who's effectively a slightly buffed regular Koopa. Afterwards, he fights the master, Jinx, 3 times. Each version of Jinx has slightly higher stats, can buff himself, hits really hard, and the second and third round have an insta-kill move that Mario needs to block or die. After beating Jinx 3 times, he gifts Mario a black belt, and him and Jagger begin jumping to emulate Master Mario's fighting style. Jinx 3 is actually pretty scary and a fun challenge for mid-game, about the time Mario reaches Monster Town. The other super boss resides in Monstro as well. Mario can irresponsibly buy a child in Moleville fireworks in exchange for a shiny stone that opens a door to the optional super boss, Hulex. Hulex is a warrior from another dimension who wants to fight the realm's strongest knight, in America anyway. In Japan, he's a 2D man, mad at the 3D world he's found himself in. It's fucking hilarious. While not actually a Final Fantasy character, his design and 2D style are definitely meant to invoke that. Plus he fights alongside 4 crystals, fire, water, earth, and wind, much like the crystals often found in Final Fantasy games, especially the ones of the era. Hulex is a hell of a fight, basically requiring Peach and some luck, at least if not at or near max level. I did it at level 26, which was pretty rough. The average turn for me was Mario attacks, all 4 crystals attack, Hulex attacks, Peach heals, Wind Crystal attacks a second time, then Mallow attacks. Some of the crystals' moves are pretty bad and don't do much, like Bolt and E-Shock, but the fucking things can toss out Sleep and Mushroom status and have some hard-hitting moves like Ice Rock, which hits for 150 damage when the characters max out at like 220. On top of 6 attacks a turn, Hulex can also set up a future sight from Pokemon Link attack that deals damage after a few turns, meaning potentially taking 7 attacks a turn, aimed randomly. Sometimes a character just gets dogpiled and destroyed. Giving Peach the anti-sleep pin and Mal the anti-mushroom pin is borderline a necessity, as Peach can wake up the others and Mal can use an item on Peach if she's mushroomed. It's surprisingly tough, but it gets easier every time a crystal drops out. The best order is starting with Wind, which has big defense but low health. Having Mario do Super Jump, Peach use Psycho Bomb, and Mal use Snowy gives some good setup to get rid of the Wind in 2 turns, which helps because the Wind is the one that causes Sleep and Mushroom. From there, water is the biggest threat because of the ice rock, and can just be pounded with Mario while Mallow does thunderbolts to hurt everything and Peach heals. Once water is gone, it's pretty much solved from there. It doesn't matter which one the player goes after, but just by attacking fire over and over again and using thunderbolts, Earth just naturally died of incidental thunder damage while I was killing the fire crystal. Once all the crystals are gone, Hulex struggles to deal any amount of significant damage, especially given Peach's group heals, and it's basically done there. For beating him, Hulex gives the best accessory, the Onyx Charm, which increases damage output by half, decreases damage taken by half, and prevents instant death. It's a really fun and tough boss battle when the RNG isn't being pure evil. The side content in the whole game is pretty decent. It's not an insane amount, but the extra bosses are all really fun, and I guess it's nice to see the Yoshis, or it would have been then. They were a little more new and special at that time. While the game would never get a proper sequel, Super Mario RPG, its unique battle system, and its goofy world and writing would highly influence the future of Mario RPGs. Paper Mario, despite its shift in art style, directly takes and improves on the formula of Super Mario RPG, which in turn led to the Mario & Luigi series. There's been scant few re-releases of Super Mario RPG, on the Wii and Wii U Virtual Console and on the Super Nintendo Classic Mini. The music has endured in popularity, and a few elements, like Goofy Bowser, have even stuck around as a primary characterization for the villain. Even some of the game's original stuff, mostly Geno, have endured. Geno is constantly requested for Smash, and even has a Mii costume in 4 and now Ultimate, sorry Geno fans, plus a few other minor cameos. It also seemingly had some content in the Mario Kun manga, but English information on that series is very scarce, let alone translations of the damn thing. While the game itself isn't incredibly well remembered by the general population, it's made a huge impact on the Mario RPG spin-off series. While it is fair to call Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars baby's first RPG, I truly don't see that as a negative. There's a lot of charm, it's constantly engaging, and the music is good. It builds a tiny little world of fun and adorable characters and takes them on a fun little adventure. The gameplay is foundationally very solid, and hell, the game is fairly short. The game has no shortage of charm nor of fun, goofy ideas. The game itself is a character just as goofy and wonderful as Bowser. It makes a solid weekend game for a lazy day. It's barely over 10 hours long, it's very short for an RPG, and I'd like to especially recommend it to people who have felt betrayed by Paper Mario lately. Super Mario RPG is quite literally Paper Mario Zero, and it's just a great little time.